Hey everybody, it's Nick, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how to make bass lines. We're going to cover a wide variety of genres from house plucks to 808s, and we're going to be using FL Studio. However, all the knowledge in this video is universal since we're going to be working primarily in piano roll. Let's take a listen to the bass lines. Cool, if you like what you heard, be sure to download the free MIDI files and Serum presets. We're also going to include 40 bonus MIDI patterns that are variations on these patterns. The link will be at the top right of the screen. For all of these examples, I'm just trying to pick a general pattern that will fit into this genre. Obviously, the sound design and pattern are very important in establishing a genre. We're going to go over the sound source, so either the Serum patch or the other instruments I'm using, and the pattern for each genre. I'll list out all the timestamps for the genres in the description, but I do recommend watching the full video so you can compare and contrast different genres. Great, so let's start with house. I did two variations for this. For the first variation, we're going to listen to the drums. So standard 4 on the floor pattern. For the bass instrument, I've got an instance of Serum. I'm not going to go into all the parameter details, but just try to highlight the most important parameters. And for this, it's definitely the envelope. An envelope is the timing of a parameter. So it's broken down into the attack time, the decay, which is how long it takes to get to the sustain level, the loudness, and then the release time, how long it takes to release to nothing. So this is a relatively short envelope, making that plucky sound. Listen to it with a longer envelope. Versus a little quicker decay time gives it a more, what we call staccato or a pluck sound. So that's very important. And this envelope's also controlling the filter cutoff. Let's listen to it without the filter. So without that, the sound is very different. So let's take a look at the pattern. For all these bass lines, we're going to have to focus on what key signature and what scale we're using. I'm mainly using minor scales throughout this, and if you're not familiar with your scales, that's not a problem. We're going to use FL Studio's helper and specifically the scale highlighting to allow us to kind of see what notes are in the scale. So using the action menu here, we're going to go to helpers. We're going to go to scale highlighting, and we're going to do automatic. We're going to then select the scale we want. So let's go ahead, do the minor natural. We're going to start with that. And lastly, I'm going to pick what's the tonal center. I'm going to pick some arbitrary tonal centers, but generally your bass is going to sound really nice between this low, E flat, and G. So let's go ahead, go to E minor. So we'll go to helpers, scale highlighting, E minor. And that way we know that all the notes that have the white gradient in the piano roll are in the key. So we know that these are all in the scale. I'm going to be referring to scale degrees a lot, which there are 7 notes in most scales. That's the standard scale that we're going to focus on today. And so this will be 1, this will be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then that's 1 again. We don't say 8, we'll just say 1 again. So let's start our bass line on the 5th scale degree. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to just do these groupings of 3/16. And then maybe this 6th scale degree. Let's make this a little longer by right-clicking and dragging. So again, in house, in these 4 on the floor genres, these groupings of 3/16 notes are nice. And then maybe I could add in a burst of energy that'll be a 16th notes up the scale. So it could sound like that. Again, we're focusing on the lighter gradients because we know the lighter gradients are in the scale. And we can maybe Command A, and then if we use B to get to the brush, Shift drag it, we can just get the same phrasing on the second half. Maybe we can go 1 octave higher. So if we select the note and then use Command or Control up arrow key. First variation of house. Let's take a look at the second variation of house. I'm going to pick another easy scale. We're going to go to scale highlighting. We're going to leave it in the minor. Let's pick A minor. A minor is the easiest scale on keyboard because it is all the white keys. We know A is here. And then notice if I do, this is the 1 again. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. For this bass instrument, it's a very similar sound design. We have a pluck bass, and that's really pulled off by these shorter envelopes on the filter cutoff. Here's without the. We have A as the home bass is 1. Let's try starting this pattern on 3. And let's use a quarter note at the beginning. So that's 4 full steps or 4/16 notes. And then go downwards, but then we can do a contour. And this is a nice rhythm. This is a little 8th and then 16th, 16th. So listen to that. And this will be nice syncopation. Yeah, I think that sounds nice when it's on the 16th or the step before the strong beat. And then maybe back up. And then same kind of figure down. So this is the phrase. Now that rhythm was messed up because I displaced it. It should be 1/16. So we can maybe make that the 2-measure phrase. We'll use E to do the range selection and then Shift drag this over. Maybe this downwards. And again, we're looking for the lighter gradients, so just A/B test it until you're happy with the line. Yeah, that's a little less spread. That's nicer. Cool, so those were 2 house variations, both using what I call a pluck bass, which are, again, those short envelopes that are really making it a short staccato sound. Let's take a look at this tech house variation I did. Let's take a look at the instrument itself. This has a little distortion, which gives a little grit to the bass. And then the distortion has a little envelope on it with the mix. So that's also kind of crucial. All right, so let's take a look at how we can make this kind of pattern. And I'm gonna pick another key and we're gonna use still the minor. A lot of these bass lines are in the minor key. A lot of dance music, I would say in general, is in a minor key. Maybe variations of the minor, where like pop and maybe more uplifting music is in major. Let's pick maybe G minor. And now that we know G is the home bass, we've started, the first bass line was on 5 going down to 1. We started the second bass line 3 going to 1. Let's start the bass line, this bass line on 1. And a lot of times if we put the bass right on the strong beat, it kind of nulls the energy. What we maybe want to do is syncopate the bass, which is put the bass on the spaces. So listen to this. So that's a nice pattern where we do the 4th cell before the beat and then the upbeat. So, and then kind of continue that pattern. And then maybe a chromatic. Now this is where we can maybe break the rules of the scale and start borrowing notes. So sometimes it's nice to add in non-scale notes. In this case, this is what we call a chromatic passing tone, in the sense that this is going to connect us from the 1. This is 7 again. So it's going to connect the 7 to the 1 using that chromatic tone right there. And let's just shift drag this. And maybe we can do variation down, maybe. Cool, so let's move on to techno. For the bass, I have another Serum instance, and it's also pretty short, or like a pluck bass. However, the notes in techno can oftentimes move pretty quickly and be really driving and pulsating with that 16th note underlying rhythm. So let's take a listen. And a big thing of techno, I think, are like filter sweeps, gradual filter sweeps. But if I take this filter cut off, first let's take off the filter, let's listen. So pretty gritty and a lot of high-end information. If we take the filter, that really smooths things out. And what I was referring to these sweeps is if we move this slowly over time. So let's take a look at how we would create this kind of pattern. And we'll go to the helpers. Let's go to scale highlighting. Let's actually select C as our root note now. And it doesn't actually matter too much minor or major. In this bass line, we're just going to keep it really simple. We're only going to play the low C and the high C. So that's the 1 and the 1 octave higher. So let's just put in 16th notes straight across. And that already helps. I have a little side chaining to my kick, which means that the volume's kind of ducking when the kick comes in. So that also helps with the energy, but this is already a bass techno rhythm. And what we can do is actually maybe put some of the notes higher, 1 octave higher. So if we do this, maybe even 1 octave higher. Let's highlight this time and then shift drag this pattern. And maybe to give a little phrasing, we'll take this last one and do a little variation. But again, still really focusing on the C's. Maybe adding a G, which if you're not familiar, the 5th or that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5th note of the scale, has a very special relationship to the 1st note of the scale, and it can often be kind of played to you in runs like this. you can hear how that automation of the filter frequency cutoff is very clutch in this genre. Cool, moving on to disco. So for disco, I actually used an instance of Contact because I really love the Scarby MM bass as an electric bass. And we did kind of want a more like analog instrument for this genre. So let's see how we would create this kind of pattern. So for disco, we're actually going to go to the helpers. We're going to go to scale highlighting. And now we're going to switch it from minor natural to other blues, which is the blues scale. And we're going to say F as the home bass. So now this is the home bass. And for these kind of disco funk rhythms, we want to syncopate it with a lot of like groupings of 3/16 notes or the clave and tresillo rhythms, which could look like this. So this would be a clave rhythm. And this is all on the 1. Let's fix the sustain on that. The minor blues scale is actually laid out in 6 notes, so it's not a 7-note scale. And we actually skip a few notes. So this is actually 1. This is considered the 3rd. And this is the 4th. This is considered the flat 5, the 7, and 1 again. So a pretty safe line is to go with the root note, which is the F here, 1, and go to the 7, which is this E flat, and then the F again. That's pretty funky. And then we can go maybe down the scale. Like this. And then maybe we'll do the same kind of phrasing with the... And notice the notes should be pretty short, maybe minus the first note. And then we can do this maybe octave jump here. So this is octave to... Octave jumps like this with the 8th note is a classic walking bass line. And we can copy this and then add a variation. We'll shift drag. And then maybe for this, we'll do coming from the bottom. So maybe we'll do this low C and then E flat, which is the 5 and the 7. Or I could even hear maybe this, and this is where we bar note. So we'll hit this, and then we'll take these two, and then just shift arrow key up. That's kind of nice because that has the chromatic. That's actually a non-scale tone, but adds tension to the phrase. Cool. So now we'll go on to our last 4 on the floor genre. And when I say 4 on the floor, I'm referring to the fact that the kick drum hits every strong beat. And I just put in a reggaeton, and this is kind of like a cumbia bass line. For the bass, we actually have a longer tone. And a little distortion to add a little fuzz to this tone. And let's go ahead back to our minor key. So we're going to go to helpers. We're going to go to scale highlighting, minor natural, and let's do G minor. So we'll go to helpers. Actually, let's do F sharp minor. We haven't done that yet. So we'll do helpers, scale highlighting, F sharp minor. And that means this is our home bass. So let's start with F sharp on beat 1 and hold it for what's considered a quarter note, 1 beat. And then we're going to do 2 8th notes or 2 half beats. And we'll outline the 3 and the 5, which is right here. So again, the lighter gradients of the scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is a standard cumbia bass line, which is just highlighting those notes. It's really nice. Let's go ahead and shift drag it across. So we'll just do it a few times here. Awesome. So moving on, we're going to go to trap, and that's going to start getting us into our 808s. For this 808, I actually used an Origin sound sample. And it's really nice to load one shots into a sampler because then you can play it like a keyboard. So for the scale, we're going to go to helpers. We're going to scale highlighting. We'll do minor natural and C minor. And the important thing for these 808 patterns is to follow the kick drum because it is kind of like a kick drum. So what we're going to do is want to make sure the rhythm's tight with it or contrasting in a logical way. So here I can hear this sounds good. If this were off, it might sound weird. So I'm going to make sure it kind of lines up with the kick and start with the root note here. So what's cool about FL Studio is it has these slide notes. So if we actually just put in a note here, double click, we can turn it into a slide note, and what that'll do is it'll slide up there and come back down. And we'll just put one down here. So a nice place maybe to highlight again is the 1 we said, but also the 5th. So this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe leave some space for just the kick here. And we can kind of continue this phrase. Maybe have a little phrase by itself here. And that's kind of like a little skip around that could sound nice. Let's actually hear how this sounds 1 octave higher. So we'll select it, Command, Eric. And maybe 2 of those down there. Cool, so I have a second variation of a trap beat. This is also based off a sample from the Southside pack. And this one I just wanted to show that this kick pattern is less involved. There's only a few kicks every now and then. And it just kind of outlines the beginning of the phrase. So the 808 has a little more independence in this line. So let's take a look at how we would do that. And I'm going to keep it in C minor. So we'll start on the 1. And then we're going to jump up to 6, which is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? Sounds really nice, and come down back to 1. That's a really nice bass line generally, is if you go from 1 maybe up to 6 and come back down. And we'll just kind of go down. And maybe we could do a slide here to maybe this high D sharp. To a slide, hit accept. A little shorter. And then let's hear how that sounds coming back down. So we'll do shift drag. And then we have that little triple bump in the kick. So let's do a triple bump there. And let's make it high. Back down to 1 here. So our second to last genre is drum and bass. This is going to be a Serum instance and a little bit longer of a sustain. The distortion is very important in this. And the filter movement's also very important. This LFO kind of wobbling the filter. Without that, that might sound like this. And it's on a dotted 8th note, which is kind of this syncopated feeling that's really nice in drum and bass. So the pattern for this is actually going to be pretty simple. A lot of the movement is actually created in the preset. So we'll do this one in D minor. So go to helpers, go to scale highlighting, select D, and then, yeah, we just kind of want the low note kind of to what I call pedal. So we just want the low note to sustain pretty long on the tonic, which is D, 1. And then we can jump up to the octave every now and then. Could sound good. So a little longer. And then maybe the octave here. Shift drag it. And that's maybe if we can add this half step to create tension. This is not necessarily in the minor scale, but we'll give some tension to the octave note. Actually, I really like that half step. So this is more of the Phrygian scale. So what we're going to do just to show you that is helpers, scale highlighting, and the Phrygian scale is down here, other Phrygian. And the Phrygian scale is really nice because it has a half step right off the bat. The second scale degree is the closest possible to the first scale degree, which adds a lot of tension. So this actually sounds nice. All right, so the last genre we're going to take a look at is future bass. And for this, we've got a pretty straightforward instance of Serum with 2 saw waves and pretty long notes. The most important thing is probably the filter cutoff, that it's kind of maybe a little low. All right, so for future bass, we're also going to use the minor scale. We'll go to the scale highlighting. Let's try C sharp minor since, actually, let's try D sharp minor since we haven't tried that. And actually, I think I was still on Phrygian, so we'll go to helpers, scale highlighting, and we'll do natural minor. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually start on the 3, go to the 5, and go back to 1. And maybe this sounds better. And maybe twice as long, so I'm going to use the stretch here. And maybe we can go down. So we'll go down. So this is 3, 5, back to 1, and then 7. And we'll just kind of copy this out. So that was an overview of how you can start making your own bass lines. Be sure to download the MIDI files and the presets. Again, we're going to have bonus MIDI files that we couldn't even cover in this video, and that will be in the description. If you learned anything in the video, please leave a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel because we're going to be releasing more production videos and tutorials. And as always, thanks for watching. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Until next time.